now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for September 15th. Well, here we are, back to our 7-minute ritual of daily tropical weather bulletins, not live this time, of course. In the tropics today we have Chanthu, which is a tropical storm, Nicholas down to a depression, and the remnants of BOB03 continue to persist in India. 67 storms have formed so far this year. It's day 107 of Atlantic hurricane season, and we now have a 90% chance for Invest 95L there. And then of course we now have a high chance for 96L as well, a 70% chance at this time, and Nicholas continues to slowly move eastwards, where it will continue to bring flooding to Texas and Louisiana for quite some time. In the Eastern Pacific, it's day 123 of the season there, and there is absolutely nothing going on, and nothing going on the next 5 days. This basin looks devoid of activity for quite some time. Moving on over to the Western Pacific, you can see Chanthu, which has interestingly been moving to the southeast in the last few hours, specifically the last 24 hours here. There's also 97W, which is newly designated and could become a weak tropical cyclone as it heads towards the west-northwest through the Philippines. In India, there is the remnants of Bobo 3 specifically, of course. That is basically becoming much harder to track its center, and it is definitely likely that it will not be on here by tomorrow, and we will be back to our normal nothing active screen. In the Atlantic, you can see Nicholas as it continues to progress towards the east there, not looking as good, but still delivering massive amounts of rainfall. You can also see 95 and 96L, which are starting to get itself organized, and we could be seeing the next 2 named storms in a few days. In the Eastern Pacific, there's nothing much going on. Of course, we had 97E, but that has become so elongated that there is pretty much no chance for it to form, and other than that, the entire basin is just devoid of any other activity going on right now, so nothing to really track anytime soon here. In the Western Pacific, you can see Chanthu, which is pretty much getting completely blown off in terms of its cloud cover and rainfall, because of the fact that it's pretty much getting blasted all the way through Japan and out of the map, literally, at least out of the visible screen here. So it's definitely interesting to watch Chanthu finally begin its decaying stage, as we have dealt with the system too long. In the North Indian Ocean, you can see what's going on with the remnants of Bobo 3 there. That is pretty much making its way more and more inland and losing any kind of center it once had. And of course, everything is returning back to normal with the monsoon season in the Bay of Bengal. You can see Nicholas, which made landfall last night as a Category 1 hurricane, and of course it is now moving eastwards and bringing significant rainfall. 6 to 10 inches across southern Louisiana expected over the next few days. Definitely a significant threat to watch over there. Here are the sea surface temperatures. They look like this, with the Eastern Pacific remaining around 28 to 29 degrees Celsius, although there have been more areas that are beginning to go a little bit below that threshold, around 27. In the Gulf of Mexico, those 30 degrees Celsius temperatures are pretty much gone now that Nicholas has gone over those. And of course, you can still see the trail left behind by Larry there. Other than that, the entire Atlantic remains around 28 to 29 degrees, with very isolated patches of 30 at this point. Most of those are now gone for the time being. In the North Indian Ocean, you can see that the Bay of Bengal is still around 28 to 29 degrees Celsius. And then as you head into the Arabian Sea, it starts at around 28 and then decreases as you head westwards. In the Western Pacific, you can see that we have 29 to 30 degrees Celsius throughout the entire basin, although we are looking at much of those 30-degree isotherms being south of Japan and near the equator, and of course the Philippine Sea as well. The southern hemisphere looking rather cool, as it has been for quite some time now. Looking at the sea surface temperature anomalies, you can see that the cold trail from Larry is still the prominent feature in the Atlantic. Other than that, it's relatively above normal. Gulf of Mexico is looking around average if you look at everything put together. Eastern Pacific is spotty, and of course the Western Pacific is looking warm everywhere, with the exception of areas south of the Hainan Peninsula. Well, on this day in 2006, Shan was a Category 4 typhoon and would become the 6th costliest disaster worldwide that year. In the meantime, there was also Lane, which was a Category 1, would get up to Category 2. Gordon and Helene were tropical systems, of course Gordon being a hurricane, and they were part of the inactive 2006 season that followed the 2005, so interesting variety of storms on this day. Of course, you can find the On This Day products issued by our Twitter handle at Cyclone History. Well, that brings us to the next names. In the Atlantic, we're looking out for Odette and Peter now. In the Eastern Pacific, the next two names here are Pamela and Rick. And in the Central Pacific, there's 104 days of summer vacation, and Hone is not there just to end it. We're not going to be seeing that for the next few days, more than likely. In the Western Pacific, the next two names here are Dianu, followed by Mindul. And in the North Indian Ocean, we're still looking out for Gulab and Shaheen. Those names we're probably not going to be seeing for another month or so. Maybe even less, slightly. Looking at the Southern Hemisphere, specifically the Southwestern Indian Ocean, the next name here is Anna, followed by Batsire. In the Australian region, we're looking out for Patty and Ruby. And in the South Pacific, it's Cody. We'll be back for another Tropical Weather Bulletin tomorrow night.